Cool. So it's 6:32. We're all here, so we're going to call the meeting to order. First order of business is to review and make any changes to the agenda. I only have one under Water Commission. I just want to add the Domino water service application. Are there any other additions or changes to be made to the agenda?
Nope.
No. All right. Hearing none. We will move on to the review and approval of minutes. First up is an oldie but a goodie. This is June 24th. The June 24th meetings have been tabled a few times due to a lack of a quorum. This would be Emily, Leanne, and myself to approve. Mm-hmm. So is there a motion to approve the minutes of June 24th?
I can make that motion.
Okay.
Great, we have a motion from Emily. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Great. We have a motion from Emily and a second from Leanne. If there's no further discussion, hearing none, we'll vote. Again, because Emily is joining us remotely, all votes tonight have to be roll call votes. So with that, Suzanne?
Abstain.
Abstain. Leanne?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Abstain.
Oh, abstain.
Abstain. Abstain. And Charlie, aye. Great. Motion carries. The minutes have been approved. Next up are the minutes of August 2nd. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of August 2nd?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of August 2nd.
Great. We have a motion from Suzanne. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Great. We have a second from Mark. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor, please, I'm sorry, roll call vote. Suzanne?
Aye.
Leanne?
Abstain.
Charlie? Aye. Emily?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye. I was at that one.
Great. Thank you. You've approved the minutes of August 2nd. Moving on to Public Works.
Did we do the minutes? Was that?
So there was a typo on the agenda. We actually, the minutes of the 19th and 6th, we do not need to approve.
Yeah,
We approved those last time. That was a holdover from the agenda that didn't get canceled.
Okay.
Moving on to Public Works. First up is Roads and Bridges. The first item here under Roads and Bridges has to do with hiring for the vacancy in the Public Works Department. And so if there's no objection, I'd just like to table this till the end of the meeting since it's going to involve the board going into executive session to discuss employment. So if there's no objection to that, we can move on to the second item in the agenda, which is the Municipal Grants and Aid Award. I just didn't know, Mark, if you had any updates on your conversations with Sean from Regional Planning.
Yeah, Sean was on vacation last week, so I sent him a message today to see when he can come out this week and meet with us.
Okay.
Go over the sites and stuff.
Okay, cool. Black Falls culvert work. This was also something that Regional Planning was involved with.
Yeah, I haven't heard any more about that.
Okay, no updates at this time?
No updates on that one.
Okay, great. Moving on to the next item under Roads and Bridges is Creamery Bridge. So quick update. Last Friday, Mark and I met with Chad Tyler down at the bridge site and the Tyler property. We looked at the property, the way it was being accessed, and discussed kind of remedial efforts that we can look at there. As far as the town's end of stuff goes, it looks like what we're probably going to try to do is when we go and actually grade that part as part of our Class 4 maintenance, we will also try to go in and reestablish the ditch that comes down the road on the south side of the Creamery Bridge Road, so the Tyler property side. Kind of reestablish that ditch so it's deeper and stone line it. That's going to create both a kind of physical barrier but also help some drainage with some water quality concerns there because we are getting direct sedimentation into the brook down that old ditch. We also discussed placing some large boulders, for lack of a better term, across that to make it so that no vehicles could get in and out. Mm-hmm. We also discussed some things with Chad about potentially doing some remedial work on the site itself. That would be outside the town's purview, but basically some grading and some reestablishing of vegetation on the site so that it didn't look like it was a parking lot. On the
That's the site like on his property?
where the fire pit is.
Okay.
Yeah. We also
Didn't you
went,
say that Vasa was gonna do that work with him?
yeah, Vasa has talked about it, and I've talked to Danny about it. Danny was a little unclear as far as kind of what work they were looking to do, and so I need to get back in touch with Danny now and kind of recap our meeting to see what Danny can lend a hand on.
Okay.
We also talked about getting in touch with MRBA for some potential funds to help mitigate some of the erosion that's happening there off of his site into the brook as a result of some of the ATV trail activity that's there. We also went on the opposite side of the brook to the parking area and discussed the potential to maybe narrow that up in a way that makes it a little bit less of a large parking area and just makes it sufficient for the snowplow and bus turnaround if we need it. Still a little lack of clarity as to what might happen there, but we'll continue to work on, some changes to the site. Missing anything?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay.
Wouldn't it seem that keeping that area as like a good parking space would actually encourage people to be parked there rather than down at his lot?
So we kind of talked about both ends of that, and I think that we didn't really come to a consensus other than that we do want to keep it open for the snowplow and the bus.
Yeah.
I think if we hit the lower sections first and try to see what mitigation efforts we can do there, that might be a phase 2 kind of thing.
Okay.
So yeah, next step is we'll follow up with road crew work around grading and ditching. We'll also reach back to Danny at Vasa around some stuff that they could potentially work on, and we'll try to get the ball moving on that. So that's it for Creamery Bridge, and that also takes care of roads and bridges. Hi, welcome. Nothing else under roads and bridges. We can move on to buildings and grounds. First item here is 98 Main Street. At this point, there's no update on that site. Still radio silence from the post office. So we'll carry that forward until we hear from them. PSB Town Office Renovation Committee. So Liz has been trying to herd cats to get to a first meeting for that group. And we're hoping that that's going to happen this month, before the end of the month. If not, then early September, to kind of kick that process off and get moving on it. Because I know that they're anxious in the office to do that. And the library is continually bursting at their seams. So the sooner we can get that work done, the better. Last item here under buildings and grounds was just the paving of the public service building lot. I didn't know if did you get any other estimates on?
I haven't gotten any more estimates. I was waiting to see, if we were gonna have the money to do Longley Bridge and that. And Billy was telling me that if we can't pave that this year, we could get a load of coal patch with our own truck. We could get in there with a grader and kind of fix it, if we can't afford to do it.
Okay.
Because we're doing Longley Bridge.
I've
Great.
been hearing quite a bit of chatter about that parking lot lately.
Yeah.
Good chatter, right?
Not happy chatter.
They're like, it makes people drive slow. It's a good thing.
Larry's got it.
Yeah. Larry?
Is Northwest Solid Waste District helping out with that cost for that parking lot?
Not as of yet, no.
We, as I recall, and I'm going back by memory, we paid them like $14,000 a year for this population to be able to do what we do.
Yeah.
Should we negotiate one for a year?
Probably wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, we can try to negotiate. We can reach out to, his name's escaping me, the director down there, but I can reach out to him about at least maybe shouldering some of the cost of the site. Yeah.
I mean, really.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Yeah, with the trucks moving in and out of there and those containers moving, I'm sure that there's at least some impact to the site from that activity. Okay, so as it stands, Longley Bridge, so if there's no objection, can I just skip to Longley Bridge right now real quick while we're on the topic, which is item D here.
Oh, yeah.
And so we are waiting on additional quotes for the material.
But we're looking at, just a rough quote of at least 50 or 60,000 to get, the material in there. That's just a rough estimate.
Okay. And that was from?
That was from St. August.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm waiting for a couple more.
Okay. Yeah, the idea is that if we can get 3 quotes on the material, that will at least cover our rear end from the federal perspectives as
Yeah.
it ties to the TAP grant, so that we can essentially follow the same process that's required there. This work is not necessarily part of the TAP grant, but because it's connected to it and the materials are gonna be, fingers crossed, reimbursed through the TAP grant as part of that cost. Just wanna make sure we do it right.
So that, I mean, that's costing about as much as what we're gonna spend on the parking lot, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. So, follow-up here is just, see if we can get the additional quote in the next couple of weeks so we can pull the trigger on that.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else on the TAP grant? Any, along the bridge, anything else on your end?
No.
Okay, awesome. So that's it for Longley Bridge. So circling back to Water Commission, so the added item here was just the Domino water service application. I think folks saw this come in today, or at least be referenced in an email today from Barry.
Barry Domino's. Oh,
Yeah, so what I'll do is pass this on to Mark to get the estimates together. For each application, we get the estimates of the hookup fee, parts, labor, bond, installation, so that the landowner knows what's up. In the email, Barry did request that we, how did he phrase it? He requested that we essentially hold the bond payment until the day, hold the retroactive bond payment until the day the water is turned on. I think what he's getting at here is that typically we have all the costs paid up front by the landowner.
Yeah.
What Barry is asking for is for us to not require the upfront payment of the retroactive bond prior to the work being done. He cites the cost of building materials, and stuff associated with that as being something that basically has put a big hole in their bank account. To my knowledge, the only time we've done this before was on the folks below my place. I can't remember their name. The folks who...
Ones who bought that little...
No, the couple, literally on 118 at the corner of Fuller Bridge Road. Sue helped them out to get funding for camping.
Codas.
Forest, yes. So the only time I think we've done this in the past was with the Codas, where we did waive that until after installation was complete and hooked up because of the funding mechanism they were using to essentially get the money. So it would take an act of the Water Commission to essentially waive the receipt of the retroactive bond payment prior to installation and initiation of service.
Yeah.
Which Barry is this?
Domino.
Yeah.
Thoughts from the board?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess he wants to get it done right off, must be.
Yeah, he wants to have the work done right off. And again, he is willing to pay the hookup, parts, labor, installation, excavation, all of that. He's just asking that the bond portion not be due until the service is connected and they're essentially ready to turn it on.
Because I think we capped the bond payment at a certain amount. I can't remember what it is, but I think it's almost like $3,000. Do you remember, Ross, what the bond payment? Can't remember.
I know that Walt.
I'll have to look in the.
Check for about $6,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have other people, have other applicants ever requested this as well and been denied?
I don't remember anybody ever requesting this outside of Forest.
No. I mean, the only way we probably could do it is set it up and then he has like a payment plan after or something.
Well, I think based on his email, he'll pay it when the water is turned on. So like, it's not like he's asking for installments. I think he's just saying if I
He
can
wants
wait.
it installed and then, okay. And
Yeah.
Pay that after.
Does he,
Yeah.
once he receive the bond payment after the water is turned on?
That's his request, is essentially
Yeah.
waiting until it's
'Cause
connected and the water's there until he pays the
Anybody
back.
for a new service has to pay the back bond payment when we put the new system in, you know.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
Usually that's paid for before we install it. This one's up by the public safety building. He wants to
Yeah.
put our line
So what's,
up in there.
what's the difference between now and when the water gets turned on?
Usually it's paid before we hook it up.
Right,
You know.
that's what I'm saying, you know, why is he holding off
Yeah, I don't,
in the beginning, not at the end?
On his, my interpretation from his email is that his personal finances are at a point where it would be easier for him to pay that fee later than earlier. It's almost like a deferral.
So, Charlie, I just wanted to
Forgot
ask
Emily
the
was here.
question, like, is this something that we're willing to do for everyone?
Yeah, it's a good point, Emily. I don't know if you heard Emily, but she asked, is this something that we're willing to do for everybody that comes onto the system? Again, there's no precedent other than Forest for doing this. There was a specific circumstance there. But then again, we also have not received this request outside of that process with Sue. So the answer to your question is, well, I don't know, Emily, the question still stands as to whether we would essentially create a precedent by doing this. Larry, yeah.
If I recall correctly, we did it for Forrest, for him, giving him the opportunity to gather the funds from the bank.
Yes,
Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to pay the bond to begin with anyway.
yes,
Okay?
Yep.
And he had an emergency situation where no water.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Right.
This is not an emergency situation.
yeah.
And he doesn't have a building on the property yet,
Not yet.
so
Yeah,
I'd be worried that we put the line in and then he just says, oh, I'm not gonna pay that. Shut me off, who cares?
yeah,
You could,
Well, that's the thing, you know, you're setting precedents that.
yeah,
For future, I know in past experience that when you set that precedence or leave it like that, it usually doesn't fare very well.
yep.
no. No, because somebody else has paid the whole thing before they got hooked up, and now
Right.
we're letting other people not do it, so,
Yeah.
yeah, then,
He's been telling me he wants to do that for 2 years now.
why, yeah.
So it's
He's been
like-
telling me like 5 years, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, so I'm hearing that the board's got
I
some
don't
concerns.
think we should. I think
Okay,
we
I'm
should.
hearing that the board has some concerns over a precedent being set here, which I think are well-founded.
Yeah,
Just in order to essentially formalize this as a response, we have a formal request and email from Barry to defer the bond payment until after the building is up and the water is turned on. And so I guess I would entertain a motion whether or not to essentially
I'll make
accede to that request, or?
a motion to
Yes.
deny that request.
Okay, motion. All right, we have a motion from Mark to deny the request. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second from Leanne. Is there any further discussion? Not hearing any further discussion, we'll vote. Again, these are going to be roll call votes because Emily's joining remotely tonight. Suzanne?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Charlie? Aye. Motion carries. Great, thanks. Okay, so the other warrant item on the agenda for the Water Commission was we invited Brent Durandolo in just to talk to the board as kind of a third-party consultant, not a member of the board, not a member of our current contractor, just as a sounding board, basically, that we can bounce some questions off of and help the board kind of understand some more stuff going on. Given that we do have a current licensed water person on the board who has a history with the system, as well as the contractor, we felt it'd be better to get a third party in here to answer questions outside of Mark. And so that's why Brent's here.
I'll recuse myself. from this.
Yeah, so Mark is going to recuse himself from the discussion. Brent, if you want to come up front, there is a mic here. That way the cameras can pick you up. It's a pretty powerful one, so you can probably sit there and that should be able to pick him up, I think. Yeah, okay, cool. So just first, for the benefit of the rest of the board and everybody else, can you just give us a quick history of your experience in the field? Yeah, that'd be great.
I've been in this industry for 40 years this year. It's my anniversary. I started working for the town of Milton. Through 15 years with the town of Milton, I became the water and sewer superintendent. After a long career with Milton, I moved down to Champlain Water District, where I served 5 years on their retail division superintendent position. And part of that position was superintendent of South Burlington Water Department. From there, I moved on to Northeast Rural Water Association, where I was under contract through Rural Water with USDA as a water system specialist technician. My role was to work with water systems throughout New England, providing technical consulting from helping them find federal monies through USDA or state revolving fund, to dealing with day-to-day troubleshooting issues from water treatment issues in the water treatment facility, pumping stations, leak detection, underground line locating. I specialized in writing water rates, and just about anything that they threw at me over the course of those years. You learn, you tweak, you develop, and for the last 4 years I've become an independent contractor, where I'm still out there consulting for municipal and private systems, wherever the job takes me through New England. So working in this capacity, I'm also a Class 4C water treatment plant operator. My wastewater certification, I've retired it because I've been out of wastewater for a number of years. I hold multiple certifications. And now I just try to go out there and help, like I did under my USDA contract, water systems that may need certain particular services. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Great. Well, I appreciate it. And again, the hope for this evening was just to provide the board some additional kind of perspective, realizing that like there's often things in any system outside of water that can be done multiple ways. There might not be one right way. So helping the board better understand some things. I want to be clear too that like this is not necessarily like a contract negotiation that we're doing here. I didn't realize you guys were going to be here tonight. I would have put you on the agenda for visitors because I do have a couple follow-ups just to the email. I really appreciate the response.
Because I sent the response on Friday, I just figured I would make myself available.
Yeah, no, it's great.
For questions.
Yep.
I didn't know where it was going to be.
Yeah, cool.
We're all surprised.
Yeah. So,
but I think it's a great forum, and I think it's great that you guys brought somebody in, have some independence.
Awesome.
It's good.
I appreciate it. So I guess the goal is just to kind of talk about our system, currently the management of it, not in terms of kind of like we're grading something. I want to be clear, we're not providing a scorecard, we're providing context for the board to think about in terms of we do have a contract renewal up in front of us. And again, just being cognizant that this is not a contract negotiation. That is not something that we would do in open session anyway. It's more just around kind of perspective for the board. So from you did have a chance to review our current contract?
I did.
Yeah, so I'm just curious in terms of kind of just generally like the contract itself, what's in the contract, the term of the contract. When you look at that as far as other contracts that you've seen for water systems, for the maintenance of them, I'm just curious in terms of how much of it looks like it's pretty standard. What areas are there for kind of difference between contracts in your experience? I'm thinking things like term of a contract, things like that. And if there were any provisions in the contract that you think the board should be paying attention to as far as a greater level of detail or potentially something that we would want to be doing better in our role as managers of the system, because at the end of the day, we're the ones entrusted with the system's management and the fiduciary responsibility of it. And so especially looking at it to the lens of how we can do better as well. So with that, is there anything in the contract that jumps out to you as being things we should be paying attention to?
Well, before I answer that question, I would like to just elaborate a little bit on a couple of short-term issues. When it comes to municipalities and contractors in general, this is kind of where I stand on that issue. I have seen where contractors working under these type of contracts for municipalities, including myself, when I say this, every municipality, even though under their structure of governance, there's the systems themselves, the water systems, the sewer systems, there's always different aspects of them that the contract can be a boilerplate type contract, but we try to tweak the contract for the system within reason. Some municipalities work very well with contractors, have long-standing relationships with the contractor, and I use that in general terms. I've seen contractors come and go. I've seen them leave and depart from the municipality and then come back years later into the municipality. That's very common in this industry. Some towns have had the option to have contractors but didn't want to move forward with a contractor because they felt that by having an employee, they had more investment in that employee, and in a lot of cases it's somebody local. That's a pretty true statement, I would have to say. Now to answer your question on the contract, I worked around signing operational services contracts for a number of years. It's a well-written contract. You dot the I's, you cross the T's. There's a lot of liability issues in contracts. They have to protect themselves. You have to protect yourselves. And I think what happens is sometimes is, the contract is presented. I'll go back to myself, I sit there on the board. They contacted me. They want me to contract out some service for maybe a month, 6 months, or a year. That's it, sometimes. Depends on what it is. They want a proposal. I'll write them a contract. We'll sit down. We'll discuss it. If I don't feel I'm getting the questions asked of me that I think they should be asking me, I'll plant the question out there for them to ask. I'll tell them, you didn't ask this question. I think we want clarification on this. It'll come up at some point. So contracts, it really takes the participation of the board to really read it, try to digest it, and generate questions. Straightforward. It's like any school project when you've got to write a paper. If you don't understand some terminology, you ask, you find out. Sometimes they're taken for granted, and I think that their contract has been around for a long time. It's in multiple systems throughout the state. As far as the scope of the contract, it's in detail. But sometimes assumptions are made in a contract. We assume this is what it says. And if you don't dig a little deeper in the assumption, sometimes you get a surprise. And I think that sometimes plays a role in let's say, misunderstandings sometimes. So there's a lot. I reviewed the contract. There's things I read through it that I would generate some questions on, but it's pretty standard protocol. I don't know if you would like me to elaborate in any way. Do you have any specific questions that you would like to ask me on the contract?
I mean, the couple that just came up, really kind of nuts and bolts ones in terms of any contract. One's the term of the contract. I'm curious if a 5-year contract is pretty standard in this area, or if if you've seen adjustments lower or higher, and I guess I'd ask your professional opinion of that.
It wants to be.
I will comment on that. We have contracts that go for a year, 5 years. A lot of times, we won't sign a 5-year contract with a new client because we'll do a 1-year term. We'll make sure it's working for both of us because, you never hit the mark in the, right off the bat. It might take more hours, less hours, more involved. There may be things wrong with the system or right with the system. So we'll usually go with a very short-term contract up front, make it a 12-month, and then revisit it and see, what the relationship is. And then we end up with a, 2 to 3 or a 5-year.
I don't disagree with what Andy's saying. I think 5 years is a long contract personally. I prefer a shorter period contract. I mean, it doesn't mean that you're not going to renew the contract every cycle. Has no indication not to. But what it does do is allow, because you have changing boards, people come and go, it allows the new board to be able to reacquaint themselves with the contractor, come into some negotiation with the contractor. That's only fair in this game because, you have faces that change too, operators. But boards change, and some towns they change every cycle, and in other towns, some of these boards have been around for, over a decade, the same people. So I like shorter term contracts. And all that means is it gives the board a chance to reconnect, revisit the issues, and renegotiate if something they don't like. Maybe 3 of you really liked it and 1 of you doesn't. But at least it generates discussion. And so I'm for a shorter term contract, like 5 years. What I normally see as a norm is the typically about 3 years, 2 to 3 years is where I'd say the norm is on these contracts. There's a lot of contractors out there writing contracts. So that's something you would want to consider, Do you want to do a shorter contract for those reasons I stated?
Another just kind of nuts and bolts thing is just the liability coverage. I think the $1 million coverage was in our prior contract as well. And I'm just wondering, everything's getting expensive. Like, should we be looking at a greater level of liability coverage?
I look at the assets. You have your coverage. The town has coverage on their facilities and their assets. When it comes to liability, you have to have the coverage for liability of any citizen who walks onto your property that could get hurt. When it comes to contractors, it varies. Today, $1 million was the standard for a lot of years. It really was the standard. I'm now seeing liability insurance increase with everything else that's increasing around us. So, my answer to that would be, if you have an attorney, town attorney, I'd run that question by them. I would ask the town attorney what they feel is a reasonable liability coverage for your contractor. I'm starting to see $2 million on contracts. And again, that's a negotiable thing.
Yeah.
But it's something you have to look at, because what we looked at as $1 million 20 years ago, and what $1 million will do today, a car accident, that kind of liability. Now, all your insurance companies are recommending that you raise your liability a lot higher than you used to carry on, personal liability insurance.
Yeah. Okay. When you talked about contracts in general a minute ago, you talked about some areas of ambiguity that can kind of create this
misunderstanding.
An opportunity for, we look at it once on paper and say it looks good, and then a situation arises where we might have different things. So I'm just curious, when you said it, was there certain areas in the contract that we could define better?
Sure. So I've generated some questions, I guess, and I just will ask both parties. you know, when we get into the day-to-day, you know, it's 14 hours, 14 hours a week. I guess I have to do it 2 hours a day, correct? Is that 7 days? Pretty much
5 days a week.
right?
5 days a week.
5 days a week, yes.
There's some days I'm not even around because I've got other
So,
responsibilities.
so that 14 hours could be more than
It's-
2 hours a day?
Right, it's,
Oh, okay,
nothing's ever the same
okay.
in my
Do you-
life.
One other question is, do you keep a daily log?
Yes.
Do you provide like a log to these guys, give them, now I understand too, we have a liaison, Mark acts as a liaison for the board, because it says in the contract that town has a liaison. So you're working, Mark is carrying out the day-to-day for the board, reports back to the board. That's my understanding, and that's pretty standard with water commissions when they are trying to run a water system, but they're all working full-time, and maybe they got one person who's around more, so they designate that person to be the liaison to kind of carry out the day-to-day stuff. And one of the questions I had was, are you providing a log of your daily activities at any given time, at interval time, or anything like that?
No, not currently. I do keep track of major things, and I keep a log at the plant about that.
Right.
So that definitely can be something moving forward.
I would recommend that, be it once a month, right?
Activity report.
An activity report to the liaison. The liaison's job is to carry it back to board, and they get to see what's going on. And I think that's a very reasonable thing to do. I think that keeps this communication. If you want to go down that road, I don't think that, do you have other systems where you've got all sorts of different applications? You have other operators, various other systems, provide an activity report to,
Yeah, I wrote a monthly activity report for Richmond. And
Not broken down hour by hour, but.
right, but you bring it to every board?
it goes to the board every month.
Right.
And say it's a couple pages long.
Yeah, are you not doing that right now?
I was not trained for that when I came on for this system. I know every system's
Okay.
got different.
So, I mean, that's something that I always felt was important personally. I always felt that was very important because, again, communication. These are all communicating issues. It says here, maintenance program, SOS will develop and submit for owner approval a manufacturer's routine maintenance program for the facilities, equipment as recommended. So that's part of that process. You know, when the board gets the contract and they read this, right? They read this under C, maintenance program. SOS will develop and submit for owner approval routine maintenance program for the facilities, equipment as recommended in the manufacturer's operation and maintenance manuals. So you know we've got operations and maintenance manuals, and they get updated for anything that is critical to the infrastructure. That would be, in my opinion, something that you would want to incorporate at various intervals in the process. What is planned? What's on the books for the next month for maintenance? What kind of jobs are we laying out, or what need, maybe nothing that month. Maybe the following month we've got a project going on. I mean, I'm only here as, you know, I'm intermediate trying the communication portion of this.
I can say, you know, as part of our activity report every month, it has a upcoming jobs and long-term plan jobs as part of the activities report every month.
For Montgomery?
No, for Richmond.
For Richard.
But, you know, I mean, that's something that, you know, we can do.
So, yeah, you have the capability to do it.
Yes.
You're doing it. You just have to implement that here.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I guess the one thing just to add that would help too is, especially when we get towards like budget season, to kind of think about beyond the routine maintenance, like what are we seeing on the horizon that we're going to want to like fire hydrants and stuff, you know, like, and we have, like, Ross is good about giving us lead time on that, but just thinking about how do we mesh lead time long enough for budget purposes, which can be challenging because things happen, but like,
Well, is when you guys do go to your budget meetings, like when we have our budget meetings, they have me come into the budget meetings to present what needs to be updated, what needs to be done. Upcoming jobs, what, initial costs are going to be. I don't know if Ross has ever been communicated with to come into the budget meeting.
He did once with Kirk, but then after that, it was really kind of informal. Like, hey, do you need to buy anything? And it was, you can definitely make that more of a formal process.
yeah. I mean, one thing that I think Brent is getting at is that like communication can be better both directions, cool. And then I guess this.
Daily logs and you turn them into a, you guys meet what?
Every 2 weeks.
Yeah, every 2 weeks. So basically, if this would quill some things, if every 2 weeks you were to submit an activities report, previous 2 weeks, sometimes there's not a lot on activities, and then sometimes you got a lot on an activity report, but it's an activities report. And that goes through the liaison to the board. And this is the process in which that communication barrier, all of a sudden, there is not, because there's this flow of communication all the time. So I stress daily logs, I stress monthly activity reports. If you'd like me to go down through anything.
Well, there's one part on operations and maintenance that I had a question on for you guys was, part of the things that we talk about are like parts, and like, I know that we've talked about it in the past around like, we've got some parts, or you guys might have some parts in stock versus we have to get parts. But one thing I'm not sure of is if we have, like, do we have an actual like parts inventory of what we've got up there that's actually like not in Ross's head? So like,
I can make one. We don't have a lot, I tell you that much. We got some pipes and some fittings that are there in case there's an emergency break and we can put it together. I can get you a list of what we have, and I can also get you a wish list.
That'd be great, because it'd be great to know kind of what we have on site so that we're aware of it. It also does create, and like, this is in no way to say that like, I think parts are leaving the building that shouldn't be, but like, it does create a check for like, hey, wait a second, where'd that pump go? And like, you didn't take it out, and she didn't take it out, so like, wait, what's happening, you know what I mean? And then we'll also kind of, help the forward thinking, and then if you do have a wish list stuff's always good to have as it pertains to budgeting and forward thinking.
Daryl has been a great resource. The reason we don't carry a lot of parts is he basically has a parts depot in Richford.
Yeah, we have more of an opportunity to keep more in inventory because we have a much bigger system and have a lot older system that fails in certain areas. So I don't like to be on a Friday afternoon of needing something and not being able to get it. So I keep a pretty good inventory. Matter of fact, Craig teases from EJP says, you're a northern stocking warehouse.
Yeah.
So we keep a lot of stuff in stock. So if something needs to be over here, it's right there. And then we just order it back in, and just restock it.
So how do those parts get billed to Montgomery? Like,
You guys have an account with EJP?
Yeah.
So you would just order it in and then I just replace it back into what I have.
and then we get a copy of the invoice?
Yes. Yeah, you always get invoices are always with everything, so you make sure that you get the invoices.
Okay, well, because I know on a couple invoices we've had an EJ Prescott invoice, but I really don't recall seeing invoices attached to many of them. I know that they're like in the invoice itself, but having invoices attached is just helpful. One for Aaron for tracking, things from EJ Prescott, so when we get their bill, and then on our end knowing kind of what we're going through. You talked about O&M, the schedule of maintenance. That was a question I had. So in one thing that kind of stands out about our plant up there is that there's not a great workspace really, or there hasn't been a workspace. So if something needs to get fixed, do you guys take it to Richford to fix it, or?
No, most of the time we do it right there. You know, I mean, it's like when we've had to replace valves and stuff on filters and everything. We've done everything right there, actuators. I mean, you know, he's usually always got an extra actuator and stuff and everything. And, you know, I usually have what tools are needed. If they're not in the plan, I have them in the truck. So.
Or we'll fix whatever needs to be fixed on site, wherever that site may be.
Okay. So less like the workbench in the shop and more like you're fixing it in the
This
field?
water system, we don't really have a lot of things that we can remove and fix someplace else. Just the way the infrastructure is. We've got a couple booster pumps, but, you know, those are in place. Like, we just replaced one last month, and that wasn't something we could just take out and work on someplace else.
I would like to interject there. As far as having a workspace, I find it critical to have a good workspace in plan. I don't know of a plant that doesn't have a good workbench set up and is organized with whatever hand tools they have available and things of this nature. One thing I find at the facility is, and I do recommend to any of the board, I don't know if all your board members have been down there recently, the plant, I think it's beneficial to visit the treatment plant and the facilities at given times. I recommend that to all boards, water commissions, and prudential committees. Sometimes I find it only the liaison is the one who goes down to the plant. And I really think it's crucial that all board members, because you folks are voted into office and you're entrusted with a big investment that the water customers will pay for many years. And so it's important that you folks try to find a little bit of time, it doesn't take very long, but go visit the plant, maybe to get just familiar with where things are. And with that said, the facility, I was there during its construction. I know the facility well. It's a small facility. There were some things I argued with the engineers, Mark as well. We argued on things that just couldn't get through to them on. There was quite a bit of money floating around and you couldn't get them to put a restroom in the treatment plant or an adequate plumbing system in there. And yet they wanted to spend tons of money on things that weren't needed. So it was quite an uphill battle. There's a certain layout to that facility that doesn't really accommodate, because you've got this office space and you have the board tables, you know, up against the wall. I think there could be some reorganization at that facility. I really do stress a work area. Right now, we've got a workbench with the top completely collapsed on it, completely full of miscellaneous parts and pieces and other debris in the plant. I think the plant could be brought up to a higher standard. I really believe that, because it is a big investment that your community is paying for. And general housekeeping and these things, I've been in, I think, about every single water treatment facility in New England, okay, over the last 20 years. And there's all levels of these facilities and how they're maintained. Some facilities, they're like, you can eat off the floors, they're that squeaky clean, that well ran. But it all depends on the time that the operator, to give credit, when you only got a couple hours a day, you know, you've got to look at that aspect of it. And is Ross running here? Is he running there? You know, but you have to find and make time at some point. Every week you got to dedicate some time, because that operation, you know, walking in the door of that plant reflects your community. Bottom line, reflects your community, and I'll just say that I think some improvement could be made in that department. And I think if you did some organization, it creates an environment for your employee, your contractor, to be able to do things more easily. And inventory is a key issue. Having inventory and knowing what you got for an inventory puts you in a position to know what you don't have and what you do need. And you'll say, well, over the course of the last year or two, what are the parts and pieces we've used the most of? And these are the gaps you have to fill them immediately. And a lot of times You know, it's the corporations, curb stops, or some copper, or some CTS, copper tubing size plastic, PVC, inserts, meter parts and pieces, these type of things. That's all well ran. You know, I look at running the infrastructure. It's a business. It's a company, right? It's like running a small business. And if it was your business, if it was my business, I'd want to make sure it was run very effectively and efficiently.
Yeah. Yep. And the same can be said for the garage and the town office. You know, when you go into the garage and the floor is covered in stuff,
Yeah.
you know, it says something, right?
It says a lot.
Yeah. And when there's flies in the overhead lights, right, Larry, in the office?
I've never noticed.
You never noticed, right?
Yeah.
I haven't heard anybody. Yeah, just
the
the.
sills, the flies, the
Yeah.
floors.
Yeah.
You know. And the reason I say what I say is because I took an immense amount of pride in my own operations. You just happen to be talking to a guy who spent a lot of extra hours of his own time making his facilities the best they could be.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who knew me when I was running a facility and came into my facility would easily say he ran one hell of a clean facility and organized. And I think that the paperwork, the paper trail from inventory to operations reports for projecting small projects to larger projects to capital sized projects, documentation, organization, filing, it's all part of the game. It's all part of being an operator. It's all these things all come together as one.
Yeah. Okay. So being cognizant of time and everything too, are there any other things, getting back to that kind of broader question about ambiguities we can make better?
I'm going through my checklist here. On the project management under the SOS contract, who is your project manager for this region up here?
Daryl.
Daryl's project manager.
Yeah, he's pretty much backup for
Okay.
Ross when he
Well,
has.
I noticed in the contract, so you're giving them management support.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Because
also
it's
Lance is the regional manager, who's
Right.
also here all the time.
okay. All right. I was curious to know who that was. I know that we've got regional managers. I just didn't know because, you know, sometimes people come in and go in who's in what position, and I didn't know who was. Okay. Hydrant valve maintenance program, distribution valve maintenance program. Do you guys have a valve and maintenance program actually where you're, I know when we went out.
Right, that's the first
Did
time.
the fire flow testing.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
the first time in my tenure with SOS and with Montgomery that's ever been done to that extent.
Can you just one more time? What was done?
When we did the fire flow, the hydrant flow testing, also
Okay.
the flushing,
Yeah.
I would do flushing, but not to that extent.
Yeah. So when I was out there, you know, obviously we're trying to fire flow test every possible hydrant we could in the system. There was 2 or 3 out there that I kind of backed away from trying to do a fire flow test on them due to liability issues with property owners or high voltage lines.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I stayed clear of that. We had an issue where I was going to create, a couple times I was going to create too much property damage. So I tended to back away from that situation. But all in all, I thought it was very successful. But in the process of doing it, cranked on a lot of hydrants in the system. And you've got a variety of Watchers Pacers. You've got some older K10s and K11s from the 70s, mid-70s. They, again, 2 men and a boy to operate one. I mean, they're beasts. They're beasts to operate. There's some hydrants that need to be replaced in the system. I would get those on a list. These older hydrants, I would put them into a budgetary discussion. You know, because today when you're talking about a hydrant, if you're dealing with sidewalk or curbing or any type of state road, you know, to replace that hydrant, you may be getting into that traffic control issue, you may be getting into state permitting or local permitting. local, you guys got to cover. State permitting on a state road, well, that's not a big deal. But all of these things add up to the price of replacing one hydrant can run into thousands of dollars easily, you know. You can be anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 in hydrant replacement very easily. There was a time when I used to just budget, you know, about $2,000 a hydrant in South Burlington, and we used to knock off hydrant after hydrant. Today, I would say that number is tripled or more, easily. And so you've got some old hydrants in the system. They become kind of a liability for you, because if 2 in the morning on a 3 alarm, you know, you've got mutual aid rolling into town, and some time is wasted on a hydrant nobody can open, okay, or it should have been bagged. That can create real liability for the town. So it's important that you know what hydrants are actively working and at what level. I mean, you could get onto a Mueller Super Centurion and boom, you know, everything's working fine. And you could jump to the next hydrant, you could get on an old K10 or an old Ludlow and boom, you're not operating that hydrant because you're not prepared to operate that hydrant.
So outside of the flow testing that you're talking about, you guys did, I know that you know some hydrants are bad, like the one we just replaced on Back Street or River Road or whatever we call it now. So outside of the flow testing, are those exercised annually, or how do you know the one on River Street was bad?
Well, we discovered it turned on and then it didn't turn off.
Yeah, I mean, that's a breakaway coupling maybe on that one. There was, I can't remember, was that a Watrous over there on 58? Or was that
58?
Yeah, that one that was cleaned off by somebody and never got replaced.
Yeah, don't know.
And Doug was the one that, I think, talked about that one over there, the fire chief, that's the one. I couldn't find the hydrant itself. The upper barrel, I thought maybe it got hit and blown.
Oh, that was for fire pond. That hydrant was not on the system.
Oh, that's that one.
That's a dry hydrant, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, but I think the fire department still.
I'm not sure. I think they were fighting with the state because they think the state sheared it off when they were mowing one year.
So it's an issue over.
So they're trying to get the state paid.
Liability and who's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So you.
But there's a hydrant right next to it that's on the system.
Correct.
So I think that's why the holdup. No one's really itching to replace that because.
Yeah. It's a matter of a breakaway coupling kit. It's a traffic kit. For that hydrant, more than I looked it over and I felt it was probably a $300-something traffic kit for that hydrant to get that one back on. But that is a dry hydrant. But it is useful in the event that they need to pull some water. In the event in your system.
A lot of what is being talked about here is asset management. It's not something that we offer as a service, but there are companies out there that will come in, evaluate your system, take a look at your entire infrastructure. They'll do things like look at your hydrants.
No, I think you're taking it a little bit too far. The operator needs to know in the system what hydrants are operating and what ones aren't. That one just happens to be a dry hydrant off the system. I understand the asset part. That's what ISO comes in.
Aging infrastructure where you have, it's not like you have all your original hydrants. Some have been replaced over the years. Some work better than others. Anybody who works in water knows which hydrants they prefer and which ones tend to last longer and work better.
They pretty much all work pretty darn good today. The technology's there. But those old goats, we call them, that are, 35, 45, 50 years old, they need to come out of the system. You've got some of those out there. Mm-hmm. You just need to put them on a list, identify them, and make those the priority hydrants in your infrastructure upgrades. It doesn't have to be a capital improvement project. It just has to be a budgeted item. And maybe you can only afford to do one a year, maybe 2 a year, but you'll get those old goats, we call them, out of the system.
Okay. But as far as exercising the valves
we have a notebook, and I made a second one for the fire chiefs of each hydrant and each valve. Anytime we operate it, we put notes down. So we could open it up and look at hydrant number 45.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the last couple of years. So we do keep track of things like that.
And are we checking each hydrant annually?
Well, we started trying to do a better hydrant check because, when we initially you had quite a few hydrants that were non-functional that we didn't know about until we
Until I
actually
went out to the,
well, now before you, and we had,
you had a list of them?
and we had Google come in and fix 6 or 8 of them because they were non-functional. You know, as we tried to go into exercise, we found that they were non-functional.
So-
But Mike did what he could to fix what he had and everything, and yes.
I mean, even Mike will tell you that some towns keep trying to get Mike to come in and re-grease these old war horses and get them to operate, but if it takes 2 firemen to open one, that's not very, you know, in the event they need a hydrant, you've got 2 guys on one hydrant trying to open it to get some water out of it, not a good deal.
Okay.
Not a good situation. So, in some cases you have to do that, but you really want a hydrant now. One man can open and not have a problem. These old K10s and old K11s, I don't want to dwell on that. I'm just saying in general, this
Okay.
is maintenance. And like anything else, you've got old resilient wedge valves maybe on one part of the system, and then you've got resilient wedge valves in other parts of the system, like the new transmission line between the center and the village. It's just a matter of if you've got a problem, identify it, make sure that everybody's aware, gets put on a list, talk about it during budget season, what you can afford to do and what you can't afford to do that year. But at least everybody's aware of it, including the fire chief. It's like the hydrant flow data. One thing down the road that may want to do is color code your bonnets on your fire hydrants for fire flow. And then the fire department knows that that hydrant will put out 0 to 500 gallons, and this hydrant will put out from 500 to 1,000, etc. These are all things that, just small improvements, but these are things that can be done.
Okay. Again, just being cognizant of the time.
Yep.
Any other high points that you had?
Well, I think between what you covered, Charlie, what I've covered, yeah, here's, I guess this is a question for, I haven't really, you know, as far as, I'd like to just hear from some of the board members, their understanding and, you know, where they are. Have you folks had a chance to look at the contract in any way?
No, I have not really dived into it. I did have a couple questions though. Just on the, like, so you're contracted for 14 hours a week, and you mentioned that some weeks you don't do that full 14 and other weeks you do more than it, and I understand why that might happen. So are the weeks that you aren't doing the full 14 hours, does that roll over into the weeks that you do more than 14 hours so that we're not overcompensating for that?
So over the past 3 years, in 2018, we averaged 21 hours a week at the system. In 2019, we averaged 19 hours per week. In 2020, we averaged 17 hours per week. And year to date, since January 1st, it's been 19 and a half hours per week.
Okay, so that sounds to me like 14 hours a week is not an adequate.
That is not inclusive of any special projects. That's just Ross showing up and fulfilling the contractual obligations.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to clarify, if we're looking at the invoices, special projects would be things that you list individual time for. That would be accounting to a special project.
Yeah, anytime you
Great.
get an invoice outside of, I looked out over the past 3 years, and you guys had very few special projects.
Yeah.
You know, this year has been kind of
Yeah, a lot of them. Oh,
deal
totally. Yeah,
for
yeah.
this system.
And a couple extra specials.
1 or 2 special
Yeah.
projects in the previous 3 years.
Yeah, okay. But if you're looking at like, I mean, rough math, 20 hours a week being kind of the average over the last 4 years, maybe 19, give or take. How many systems do you run, Ross?
I have 9.
You have 9 water systems you're looking after?
Yes, 4 of them are schools. They're really not a heck of a lot. Basically, I'll do their water report and do their sampling and keep them in compliance. A lot of times they have a custodian that does the dailies, so that's not a lot. Albany, Berkshire, Alpine Haven is getting better. That has been neglected for years and years, as many of you know. It's it's definitely improving.
Yeah.
Berkshire, that's Berkshire, Berkshire School, and Waterville, and they all require different things. They each have their own quirks, they each have their own personality.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was just thinking, like, if you're spending 20 hours a week here and you've got 9 systems, like,
This is my biggest system.
Yeah.
The way we're set up is, we have systems where we have 2 full-time operators at that system, and then we have contracts with other systems that don't require daily visits or really anything more than a quarterly test compliance and everything in between.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
And to kind of clarify what we're also saying, if he, like, is 14 hours a week, if he was called away on another system and he didn't get here today, usually that means he's going to spend 3 hours or so the next day. You're doing more, so, you kind of make it up.
Okay. But we're not paying him like overtime for a week that he comes in 20 hours if the week before he only did 10. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
So.
Can I just get to the, sorry, there's a man behind you with his arm up.
I do have a question. When a local realtor asks SOS for assistance with a saleable property, but no matter whether it may be where the shut off is or turn the water on or whatever, who pays for that charge?
I'm not aware of a situation where,
Usually they don't get charged.
Beg pardon?
Yeah, it's just kind of.
If I'm already on site doing whatever and I get a call from, hey, can you go shut this off? I mean, I'm not gonna attack a special project and.
Right, we're not going to bill you for an hour because he went out and located a valve. And like you said, that goes to some of that ambiguity where an assumption is made. Well, don't you guys take care of this, or don't we owe you for this?
okay.
Yeah, that's just one of those.
Yeah, I mean, it is. The homeowner calls, they need to find their shut off, seasonal calls, I can't really address that because I haven't really looked at the water ordinance. And some of that stuff sometimes is addressed in the water ordinance as far as fees for shut off, turn off, or locating.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a locating fee.
Okay.
This past winter, there was a leak in a house right by across the street from the red house there on North Main Street.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, it was leaking down the road, and I got a call from the operator of the grocery store. He was kind of caretaker, and it was Saturday, and I came out, and that was, I put that on my time sheet as responding because to me that was a leak in the system that I wanted to get on top of.
Okay. Yeah. Did you have another question, Suzanne? I didn't want to.
No, that was pretty much
That
it.
was
And Daryl one of you answered that his averages was a good number to have as well.
Okay. Leanne, did you have any questions that were
I
outstanding?
didn't, that was the only thing that I noticed when I was reading through it, was it seems like maybe there's more for Ross to do than the 14 hours is gonna be good enough for.
Okay.
And that would be something that we would talk about during contract negotiation.
Yeah, great. Brent, any final stuff from you?
Yeah, the only thing I had checked off on this list was incidentals. To be aware, for the board to be aware, and look at your year-end incidental costs. I mean, those are the cost overruns that aren't particularly addressed in the contract. They're incidentals. They're things that are unexpected. Sometimes things run over on a job, or it doesn't meet the criteria of the language of the contract.
Okay.
So there's extra fees involved. And you have to look at those at the end of the contract. That's why I tend to, a lot of times these things don't get visited only at renewal time.
Yeah.
They should actually be looked at yearly on those things. And again, final thing I'll say is, you have a history here of going from having your own employee to having a contractor. And, these are all things that are weighed. You have to be happy with your contractor, you have to be happy with the contract. And the only way to get to that happy point is to have a very in-depth discussion. And hopefully today we've been able to generate the wheels to start turning as to what best meets the needs of Montgomery.
Yep.
And that is, I find the end result, what will make both parties happy for a long-standing relationship. And sometimes that is short-lived, and other times it goes on and on for years. So
Yep.
these are all things you have to weigh.
Great.
And no, I think you guys, I mean, think the board,
Yeah, no, I'm glad you guys were here so that we had a little bit more.
I think it's
Yeah.
easy to fall into that, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a list going
Contract
of,
signed, it's just kind of like, okay, well, I
Yeah.
assume we're all set, but really,
yep. No, there's definitely things that came up, that running notes that I've got about things that we can do better in terms of, our duty as the water commission that, we haven't been doing as good as we could, so,
it's all time too, you know.
Yeah.
It all takes time.
yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming tonight,
Yeah.
Brent, a lot.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Anything from you guys just in reflection of the conversation that we all just had? I just want to give you guys a minute to just, is there anything that sticks in your head about something that came up or something you wanted to clarify or?
I can't think of anything. I think it was pretty thorough. I think this was good. I think we should continue to do this.
Yeah.
For both sides.
Cool.
We're happy to continue the discussion on whatever questions you have throughout your discussion over the next weeks to talk about moving forward.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all of your time tonight coming out here for this. And so we'll keep the conversation going. Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Any further follow-up questions?
We know where to find you.
Feel free to call. Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you very
One
much.
thing I wanted to ask Brent while you're here, the fire flow testing, we've talked about it. I haven't nailed it down yet. I have talked to the fire chief. He absolutely wants it done again.
Okay. I think we were talking into September
Yep.
this year.
Yep.
Try to either towards the end of September, just a little earlier than October, if possible. But I guess it's going to bounce around your schedule, my schedule,
do
but
mine
I'd say
around
something towards end of September at this point. I don't know what your schedule's like for that.
Right now it's wide open for them.
Okay.
But whenever you have, I'd
Yeah,
like to do it.
I'll call you and throw some dates at you.
If we could do it consecutively, like we did last year,
Yeah.
I think that's the best.
Yeah,
Instead of
that's fine.
hopping around.
Awesome.
Very good.
Well, thanks again, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So we're past when we usually do visitors. We kind of stretched across our 7 o'clock mark, so I apologize, Larry and Anita. But I do want to pivot to visitors now and give you the floor if you've got anything specific that you guys wanted to talk about tonight. Thanks so much.
I just remind the board that there are state statutes considering fireworks. It is not illegal to buy them. However, it is illegal to set them off without a signed off document by the fire chief. 1:30 in the morning, night before last, I don't believe that was signed off. Okay?
45 minutes.
45 minutes of it, I don't think anybody that's setting them off had a single concern about an ill person, a child being woke up, some sort of dog running, scaredy cat out of the house and never to be seen again, or anything like that. But my concern is really the health of elderly people.
Yeah. Was this recently? There was a
Yes, night before last.
night before last, so Saturday.
The alleged person is well-known, and luckily he's well-to-do, but he feels that he can set off fireworks most every Saturday or Sunday.
Okay, so this wasn't something that might have been associated with a wedding of one of your neighbors, was it? No. Okay, I wasn't sure.
This has happened on numerous occasions, but
Thank you, Brent.
1:30 in the morning, the other morning was a bit much.
Yeah.
And I relate it to having a house front doorstep 12 feet from the pavement on 118 and complaining about cars, trucks, and
Yeah.
ATVs.
Okay. We'll try to get reminders out to folks about that, and we can do that through social media. I mean, we can remind folks that if they're going to be letting off fireworks, they need to get permission from the fire chief.
I actually think, if I read the statute correctly, there's actually a time limit at what times they can be set off as well.
Okay,
How late they can be set off. I may be wrong.
I'll check that.
Johnson has a very nice policy.
Cool.
Do we have a town policy on fireworks?
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't think so.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Anything you need? No? Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. It's good to see you guys. It's been a while.
Yes.
Some of us are feeling better.
Good. So moving on to old business, probably take through a lot of these pretty quickly. The ARPA funds have not been deposited yet, so we're waiting on that. I still need to follow up with Aaron on the budget question. We had the question about budget overages due to COVID and where that put us in that first category with expenditures covering things that we couldn't pay for because of budget situation. Just again, to clarify, we came out of the pandemic pretty good budget-wise, but I will follow up with Aaron on that clarification. I'm also waiting on a couple points of clarification around some of the projects that we had talked about and how that relates to things that have to do with public works, essentially kind of taking the very vague parameters the feds give us and figuring out, well, does this count or does this count? And so trying to work with VLCT on if we can nail that down. So for now, we're waiting for the funds to hit, and then as soon as we get clarification on those things, we can probably schedule a specific meeting and warn it a little bit better. I think that the ARPA funds are something that I think people in town are at least aware of, should be, and probably have some say, or not some say, but some like opinions.
Yeah.
So I'd like to try to schedule a meeting where we can get some more people here from the public to talk about, you know, at least just for the process, if not the content. If there's nothing else under the ARPA appropriations, wastewater and streetscape projects, work on that is progressing, same as last time. I think they have one more site to do the test pits on. We are still waiting for clarification, or not clarification, for word on what the next steps with the congressional designated spending request are. Again, Sanders advanced that to the Interior Committee. As far as I know, it has not been approved by the committee yet, and it has not been attached to appropriations bills, but I'm trying to, you know, keep tabs on that as we have. Larry, yeah.
Just a suggestion that if the wastewater, the streetscape thing should go through, you may be able to take care of all your hydrant problems all at the same time.
Yeah.
And you may want to consider including that in the streetscape.
Yeah, totally. So that's the brief update there, is things are just progressing as normal as they have been. Item C under old business. So we talked about this last time. It was the Tim Snyder's complaint about the dog next door and the need for a hearing. And so consultation with Sue, going back to the correspondence and checking against the ordinance and statute again. We don't need a hearing for this. I'm just going to write them a certified letter acting as dog officer in the absence of one. I did reach out to Tim just to see if there's been any other incidents since the last correspondence at the end of June, just so that the correspondence to the dog's owner can reflect that. But just to clarify, we do not need to hold a hearing at this point. We can handle that via a letter. Per the ordinance, a second offense would be a fine, a third offense would be a fine and possible impoundment of the dog. And then item D relates to that animal control officer vacancy. This is carried forward. We still have the vacancy. Liz, or I think Liz was going to reach out to Tracy Ovitt about that. So I'll follow up with Liz to see if he's had a chance to. And that takes us through old business. New business tonight is strictly overweight truck permits and liquor licenses, which there are none. And then we have orders to sign. So with that, what I'd like to do is circle back up to the conversation around public works and the public works hire and department structuring. For this one, again, the application that we have not received any other applications in for this position, so the only application we still have in is the application from Mark Briette. So at this point, what I'd like to do is ask for a motion to go into executive session and have Mark excuse himself from the discussion.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Suzanne to go into executive session.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second from Leanne. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. So this is a vote to go into executive session to discuss hiring on the road crew, Public Works Department. Leanne?
Good night. Aye.
Suzanne?
Aye.
Who is this Mark?
Emily?
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Mark will abstain. Charlie, aye. Great, so we are now going to go into executive session. At this point, we're going to ask Mark to leave. All right, is there a motion to exit executive session?
I'll make a motion to exit executive session.
Okay, Suzanne has made a motion to I can't talk. Suzanne has made a motion to exit executive session. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second from Leanne. Is there any discussion?
That's a tongue twister.
Hearing none, we'll vote to exit executive session. Suzanne?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
Emily? Aye. Charlie? Aye. Mark?
I abstain.
Abstain. Great. So we are now out of executive session. I would like to make a motion that the board hire Mark Briette on as Public Works Director at 30 hours a week at an hourly rate of $25 an hour. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Sorry, I'm just typing. Great, we have a second from Leanne. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, we'll vote. Again, the motion on the floor made and seconded is to hire Mark Briette on as Public Works Director at $25 an hour for a 30-hour work week. Suzanne?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
Emily? Aye. Charlie? Aye. And Mark?
I abstain.
Would abstain. Great. Thank you. Motion carried. So we will draft the contracts that go along with that, and we will also draft the policies and procedures around that. There's no formal motion around it needed, but one thing discussed in executive session was the need for strict policies and procedures, as well as firewalls around at what capacity Mark is acting as advisory in his role as Public Works Director versus in his governance role as a board member and making decisions around things that impact public works. So we'll get those drafted and we'll get them for board review and adoption for the next meeting.
Charlie, do we need to add to that motion that his 30 hours a week will be evaluated at 90 days? As discussed?
Yeah, so since we already made that motion and passed it, then
Can I
if
make
you want.
an amendment?
Yeah, so Suzanne has made a motion that we, that this hire be Suzanne has made a motion that the hire at 30 hours a week be pertaining to the first 90 days of employment, and the hours per week will be reassessed after that.
Yes.
Okay.
God, I swallowed the wrong thing.
Is there a second to Suzanne's motion?
I'll second it.
Great, we have a second from Leanne. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please, I'm sorry, it's a roll call vote, my bad. Suzanne?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
Emily? Aye. Charlie? Aye. Mark?
Abstain.
Abstain. Great, motion carries. Excellent. And that brings us through the work of the board this evening. So with that, a motion to adjourn is always in order.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Great, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Excellent, great. We have a motion made and seconded to adjourn.
Team Ann's over here.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Suzanne?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
Emily? Aye. Mark?
Aye.
Charlie? Aye. And you've adjourned the meeting at 8:21. Thank you very much.